Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 170. Settling down. Lei Tie ordered Uncle Fu to give a reward to the messengers and asked him to see the people out. Chen Fu retreated outside the door and waited for orders. As a modern transmigrator, Qin Mian was very interested in the historical things such as imperial edicts and imperial mandate document. Seeing that there were no outsiders in the room, he opened the imperial mandate document and found that the words Lei Qin Shi and Noble Lady of the First Rank were written in neat traditional Chinese characters along with the date of the year and a bright red seal at the very bottom. He looked again at the noble lady's clothes neatly stacked in the wooden tray. On the topmost was the crown. To be exact, it was a headband made of bluish-green jade inlaid with gold and adorned with a blue gem in the middle. Owing to the design being simple, elegant, and stylish, it didn't appear tacky at all. He shook open the noble lady's clothes and felt relieved that Emperor Xiaowei was not bad. At least the emperor didn't give him a woman's dress on purpose. The indigo almost black brocade long robe was tailored with first-grade cloud brocade. Its wrought surface was suffused with radiance. The front chest was embroidered with an ethereal cloud pattern and flying phoenix pattern. The corners of the robe were crisscrossed with gold thread, showing a sense of solemnity and seriousness. There was also a matching wide belt. The comparison between Qin Mian's ordinary clothes and this noble lady's clothes was akin to the difference between casual wear and a Western-style suit. Even Lei Tie couldn't help but praise, "Not bad. Wife, have a try." Qin Mian glanced sideways at him and directly put on the noble lady's clothes. In the past, he used to dress mostly based on the principle of comfort, giving himself the perception that was more like a soft and moist jade. Now, he was more like a gem that was brilliantly dazzling, honorable and elegant. Lei Tie only found that stars were glinting in front of his eyes. His gaze burned hot. He walked 2 steps closer and tied the belt for Qin Mian. When Qin Mian was encircled by Lei Tie's arms, his cheek was pressed by 2 warm lips and nuzzled for a few breaths before they retreated. Qin Mian raised his eyes and his gaze intertwined with Lei Tie. For quite a long time, they didn't shift away. Lei Tie freed Qin Mian's long hair, then pulled it up again, and bound it up with the new headband. Qin Mian softly coughed, breaking the ambiguous atmosphere. "How do I look?" "Very good looking," said Lei Tie in earnest. Qin Mian rubbed his cheek, turned his back to Lei Tie and quickly took off the clothes. It was because he had a hunch that if he didn't take it off quickly, Lei Tie would take it off for him and take off more than that. Lei Tie looked at Qin Mian's back regretfully and said to himself that there was no need to hurry. The fire in his body gradually cooled down. Qin Mian returned to him and sat down. "Tie, let's talk about the big issue. Look at the elaborate and fine workmanship of this headband and set of clothes. It should take at least 5 to 6 days from designing until they take form. From this, we can see that this set of clothes was made in advance. But why didn't His Majesty issue the 3rd edict when he issued the 1st and 2nd edicts, instead of waiting until now? It made me feel like he only made up his mind after he had seen me." At the mention of this, he squinted at Lei Tie and said in a sour tone, "Why should he? It's like if I didn't pass his test there, I wasn't worthy to be with." Lei Tie abruptly kissed Qin Mian's lips, blocking up his last word. He sucked hard and then let go, gazing deeply into Qin Mian's eyes. "Worthy or not, I have the final say. Toward you, is he?" Qin Mian narrowed his eyes as he interrogated. Lei Tie pulled a wry face. "Don't talk nonsense." Qin Mian couldn't help laughing and stretched out his hand to rub the corner of Lei Tie's rigid mouth. To be able to make Lei Tie show a wry face gave him a sense of achievement. Lei Tie patted him on the shoulder to express that he was serious. "Wife, the reason His Majesty suddenly started using me again is unknown. But for now, the title of Noble Lady of the First Rank is good for you. The state of Great Xia is rigidly stratified. Most people would dare not offend you for having this title." "Understood," said Qin Mian. It was uncomfortable for a man to be officially titled lady by the emperor, but he didn't mind. Ever since the beginning of cultivating the Dao, he had gradually become a little detached from worldly affairs. He had been indifferent to many things in the secular world, and ordinary matters absolutely couldn't stir his heart. As long as LIAN, Yuan, and Mian were by his side, he was invincible. He asked in a low voice, "Could it be that the frontier is going to war? Otherwise, His Majesty wouldn't suddenly reinstate a general who had resigned for many years. I also have this suspicion. I'll find out when I have a chance." LIAN comforted, "Leave this matter to me. You don't have to worry about it." Mian nodded. He barely had a usable connection in the capital. Even if he wanted to worry, he had nowhere to start with. It was better to work separately with LIAN. LIAN went to arrange for Lei and the 9 armed servants. Lei had a sharp tongue and was experienced in handling affairs. Later, he would be Mian's attendant. Lei Zhong and Lei Hui, one was steady and the other was smart, they would be LIAN's attendants. The other 7 armed servants would still be armed servants. Mian called Uncle Fu in. He learned that all the servants in the State Defender Duke estate, besides those sent by the Commandery Prince Mu, were sent by the influential officials who wanted to be on friendly terms with LIAN. They even sent the title deeds. Mian took care of the matter himself and gave Chen Fu 5 taels of silver as a reward and 200 yuan to each of the people sent by the Commandery Prince Mu to help, and asked Uncle Fu to send them away. Then he asked Lei to call a servant and sell all the remaining servants, because no one could tell if anyone else had been planted as a spy. For those influential officials who sent the servants, he sent a thank you letter and a return gift. Henceforth, Uncle Fu was the steward of the State Defender Duke estate, Aunt Fu was in charge of the kitchen, and Lei's wife was in charge of needlework. The estate still needed manpower. Mian decided to invite a broker over to buy people after he completed the plan. On that day, Uncle Fu and Aunt Fu led all the servants to place every baggage in its proper place. Mian cooked for his family of 4, while Aunt Fu and Lei's wife cooked for the others. After having dinner, everyone had an early rest. The first day passed as such. The next day, Mian ordered Lei Shun to ask Lei Xiongji which school and academy were the best in the capital. He also asked Lei to call in a broker to fill up the manpower requirement in his house, such as gatekeepers, kitchen maids, and manservants who would be responsible for driving, sprinkling water and sweeping the floor, taking care of the horses, and other manual work. Among them, the 6 people hired in the kitchen and the sewing room were all women. 2 of them were married women and the other 4 were young girls between the age of 14 and 18. All of them were ordinary in appearance and honest looking. In other words, there were only 8 women in the entire State Defender Duke estate. Mian wrote down the rules of the State Defender Duke estate for the steward to read to everyone and asked them to memorize the rules. Besides that, Mian planned to provide 2 study attendants for each of the 2 children. If there was no unforeseen event, the 4 study attendants would grow up together with Yuan and Mian. Therefore, Mian spent a lot of time on the selection of candidates. He visited several big brokerages in person and finally selected 4 boys aged between 8 and 10. He asked Yuan and Mian to name the 4 study attendants. Yuan's study attendants were called Pabing and Bohen, which made Mian palm his forehead in speechlessness. Mian's study attendants' names were not normal either. They were called Fiyu and Liuxing. Adults couldn't understand how children think, but Mian respected the 2 little boys' ideas and settled down their names. LIAN put a seal on each of the 4 study attendants. Once they revealed any secrets about Yuan and Mian, the seal would be triggered. In the eyes of outsiders, they would appear to be in a coma for no reason and could no longer regain consciousness. Yuan and Mian now lived in the main courtyard of the rear yard with Mian and LIAN. They each lived in a wing room, while their study attendants lived in the side room of the wing room. The task of the 4 study attendants was not only to study with Yuan and Manman but also to get up early every day and practice with Yuan and Manman. They didn't need to protect Yuan and Manman, but they at least needed to be stronger, so that they wouldn't be tired even if they were just doing errands. The second day passed by in a bustle. In the early morning of the third day after breakfast, Mian and LIAN tidied up Yuan and Manman. The family of 4 went to visit Chao Zhongshan, the dean of Dongyang Academy. The 4 study attendants also had to enter a school, so they went together. The most famous academies in the capital were LIAN Academy and Dongyang Academy. LIAN Academy was famous for its strict teaching in which many gifted scholars came forth. The current Prime Minister Wen and 4 ministers out of the 6 ministries were all from LIAN Academy. Dongyang Academy was not bad either. Its academic atmosphere was relatively relaxed. Every first day of the month was a holiday and the last 3 days of every 2 months were long holidays. Mian and LIAN's main purpose in sending Yuan and Manman to study was to enable them to learn knowledge, rather than to make them be the number 1 scholar or high-rank officials. Therefore, they preferred Dongyang Academy. Most importantly, Dongyang Academy was not far from Chang'an Street. It was about a 15 minutes ride by carriage, very convenient for Yuan and Manman to go to and from school. The carriage stopped at the entrance of Chao Zongshan's house. Yuan and Manman jumped out of the carriage by themselves. The 2 little boys seemed to be in the first rebellious period of their lives. They felt that they had grown up and were no longer willing to let their fathers hold their hands or pick them up and down. Naturally, Mian let them have their ways and walked leisurely behind them. LIAN carried the gift himself. The 4 study attendants followed Yuan and Manman. A manservant ushered them in. Chao Zhongshan was a grey-haired old man in his early 50s. He had a serious face. After Mian's group greeted him appropriately for the first meeting, he stared at Yuan and Manman without expression. Yuan and Manman were not afraid of him. They sat upright and looked back with their eyes blinking. As long as the 2 children weren't impolite, Mian and LIAN usually didn't interfere. They raised their teacups and drank the tea. There was a moment of silence in the hall. After a good while, Chao Zhongshan laughed like an old child. He patted them on the shoulders and asked them some questions, such as how many of the 4 books and the 5 classics they had read, whether they could read and so on. Yuan and Manman had clear enunciation, not in the least timid. Chao Zhongshan constantly nodded and finally told Mian and LIAN that he would put the 2 children into Class 1 of beginner-level class. Meanwhile, the 4 study attendants with no educational foundation would be in Class 3. They would begin to attend school the next day. Mian took the gift from LIAN after paying 1 year's fee. "Many thanks, Dean Chao. This is a little of our." Chao Zhongshan frowned, held his beard, and said coldly, "Didn't State Defender Duke and Lady inquire before coming here? This old fellow doesn't accept gifts." Not taking it to heart, Mian smiled, "Dean Chao, don't worry. These are not valuable things. They are our homegrown fruits and our homemade snacks as well as 2 jars of fermented tofu." At a young age, Yuan already had the demeanor of the eldest son and elder brother. He cupped his fist and said, "Why don't Grandpa Dean accept them?" This student and Didi also helped to make the snacks. Manman repeatedly nodded, "They taste sweet and salty. Grandpa Dean should like them." "Oh." Only then did Chao Zongshan's face softened. He said with a smile, "Fine, then I'll take them." When they came out of Chao Zongshan's house and got on the carriage, Mian picked up the water cup on the table and put it down again. After a while, he picked it up again, looking a little anxious. When they were in Green Mountain Village, their children also went to school, but the village was under their sphere of influence, everything was under their control, so there was no need to worry about it at all. However, the capital was different. He was uneasy at the thought that the 2 children were not around him and LIAN for so long every day. He was not only worried about this aspect but also worried about. "Leave it to me. LIAN fully understood his concerns and held his hand tightly. Lao Dai, what's the matter with Dai? Asked Manman with concern. LIAN replied in a steady voice, your Dai is worried about you. Worried about what? Yuan didn't understand. Dai, don't worry. Didi and I are just going to school like before. LIAN motioned Qin Mian not to open his mouth and looked at his two sons. Qin Ruki and Lei Rulan. You know, you are the only children who have two fathers in the entire Dongyang Academy and even the entire capital. In the eyes of others, this is not normal. Maybe other students will make fun of you for this. Will you be scared? End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 171. Commandery Prince Mu. Qin Mian's heart almost jumped to his throat. It might be cruel to say this to the children so early, but it was really a problem that the two children would have to face. Yuan raised his little face, disapprovingly, Lao Dai, we know we don't have a mother. We've known that since we were 1 year old. Qin Mian was so amused that he thought to himself, son, are you sure you're sensible when you're 1 year old? So what? Lao Dai and Dai are so powerful. Other people can't have two fathers even if they want to. We don't need a mother. It's enough to have Lao Dai and Dai. Manman stuck out his small chest with a proud look. Yuan went to Qin Mian and stood on tiptoe to kiss his cheek. The small paralyzed face was dyed with a layer of blush. Dai, don't worry. Manman was unwilling to be outdone and kissed Qin Mian on the other cheek. Qin Mian was instantly cured by his two sons. He gathered them in his arms and laughed, good, as expected of my sons. You remember this, if someone calls you names, you will return it with no swear words. LIAN shook his head slightly and didn't interrupt. If someone hits you, hit back without being polite. Qin Mian looked angry as if his sons had been beaten. A smile flashed past in LIAN's eyes. Yuan patted his agitated Dai placatingly and said with a calm manner, does Dai knows what is subdue the enemy without fighting? Rest assured. Fighting is a disgrace to the educated class. Manman waved his hand and said, does Dai knows what is murder a person with a borrowed knife? Rest assured. The corner of Qin Mian's mouth twitched. LIAN patted the two small one's shoulders in compliment and held the big one in his arms. I've said it, our sons are very smart. Qin Mian was quite at a loss for a reply, but he finally laid down his worry. Early the next morning, just after the hour of Mao began, Qin Mian heard the sound of LIAN putting on his clothes. He half opened his eyes in a daze but his brain still hadn't woken up. LIAN, what? /note, hour of Mao is 5 to 7 am/. LIAN leaned over him and gave him a kiss on his lips. Sleep on. Going to court today. Oh, take care. Qin Mian obtusely remembered that Emperor Xiaowei only gave LIAN 3 days off. He hooked the man's neck and kissed him on the lips. After he wriggled into the quilt, he closed his eyes. His foot was exposed outside the quilt. LIAN put it back into the quilt, finished dressing up and went to the outdoor training ground to practice 2 sets of boxing. Then, he went back to the washroom to bathe and change clothes, put on his court attire and went out with his 2 attendants. Qin Mian listened to his steps gradually got faint from the distance, opened his eyes, lifted the quilt and got up. After he had washed up, he practiced martial arts, bathed and changed clothes. It was already at the hour of Chen. /note, hour of Chen is 7 to 9 am/. Afterward, he went to the 2 children's rooms. Although the 2 children were young, they developed good living habits just like their fathers. When Qin Mian arrived, they both had gotten up, dressed, and finished washing up already. Qin Mian watched them finish practicing martial arts with the 4 study attendants. After they bathed and put on clean clothes, he had breakfast with them. By this time, the sky had already brightened. Considering that the boys were to be raised roughly, Qin Mian only sent them to the carriage. The carriage was allocated by the imperial court to the state defender Duke estate in accordance to the regulations. Afterwards, it was especially used to transport Yuan and Manman to and from school. When passers-by saw the carriage of the state defender Duke estate, they would step aside and not likely affront it. It was kind of a safeguard for Yuan and Manman. Henceforth, Lei Qingong and Lei Qingshun were responsible for transporting the 6 children. It was too troublesome to go back and forth in a carriage. Therefore, Yuan and Manman wouldn't go home at noon. Lei Qingong and Lei Qingshun would send them lunch. After seeing the carriage go away, Qin Mian turned to enter the door. Yesterday, he had written a notice to the Commandery Prince Mu estate to let them know that he would visit today, and received a reply. When Lei Tie came back from the court, they were going to go out. At the beginning of the hour of C, Lei Tie came home. He came galloping on a horse with an impressive presence. Qin Mian's eyes were full of appreciation and praise. Lei Tie still had to go to the army camp to be handed over the commander-in-chief command of the army. After exchanging a few words with Qin Mian, Lei Tie hurriedly rode away with Lei Qinzhong and Lei Qinhui. In the first part of the hour of Wu, he stepped into the house again and brought back 20 tall and upright soldiers from the barracks. These 20 people were his personal guards henceforth. /Note, hour of C is 9 to 11 am, hour of Wu is 11 am to 1 pm/. Qin Mian told the manservant at the door to go to the kitchen and bring breakfast. Then he grumbled about Emperor Xiaowai, the time of going to court is too unreasonable. Breakfast is delayed until this time. Fortunately, Lei Tie didn't need to eat grains, otherwise, he might write a complaint to the palace. Lei Tie said, "Today is mainly about the handover of the army, so it's a little late." Qin Mian opened the wardrobe and picked out clothes for him. "How about you wear white, too?" Lei Tie looked at his wife's white robe and nodded. Qin Mian chose a white inner garment and a white lined robe with a slanting lapel for him, in which the lapel of the lined robe was light blue and matched with a light blue belt. Lastly, he wrapped a white overcoat for the outermost layer. Within his frosty grandeur, it brought up some kinds of supernatural aura, which intensified his charm. Aunt Fu soon brought piping hot small steamed meat-filled buns and warm soup. Qin Mian then asked, "How was things in the court?" Lei Tie replied, "Everything seems normal." Qin Mian slightly frowned. Emperor Xiaowai called Lei Tie back to the capital so suddenly, but everything in the court was normal. Alas, he didn't care too much. Foxes always showed their tails. It was useless to be anxious now. When Lei Tie finished his breakfast, they rode on horses to the Commandery Prince Mu estate. Riding a horse was much more comfortable than riding a carriage. The streets in the capital were spacious enough and both of them preferred riding horses. Lei Qinlei followed with the big carriage they brought from their hometown, which contained gifts for Chen Mufeng. The fact that Lei Tianren, the former general of the West Order, was appointed the Defender Grand General of the state and granted the title of State Defender Duke had spread all over the capital. And Qin Mian, who was appointed as a noble lady of the first rank by the emperor, had also attracted much attention. The two men were watched by innumerable pairs of eyes as they rode on horsebacks down the street, but they still kept a straight face. They calmly arrived at the Commandery Prince Mu estate. Chen Mufeng was the eldest son to the principal wife of Chen Guangming, the younger brother of Emperor Xiaowai of the same parents. Chen Guangming was granted the title of Imperial Prince Ming by Emperor Xiaowai. Chen Mufeng fully deserved the title of heir of the Imperial Prince. His status had been very noble. Later, he was granted the title of Commandery Prince by Emperor Xiaowai along with an official residence. It was thus clear that Emperor Xiaowai and Chen Guangming were very close. This was also the reason why when Mu Chen showed his token of authority to Lei Tie believed Mu Chen's power was strong enough. Although he did not see the full token back then, he recognized the unique signet of the imperial clan. The middle gate of the Commandery Prince Mu estate was wide open. Chen Fu, who knew how long, waited at the entrance. He respectfully invited Qin Mian and Lei Tie into the estate. When Chen Mufeng received the news, he welcomed them with a laugh. His eyes swept over Qin Mian, Lei Tie, Lei Qin Lei, and Lei Qin Zhong. He cupped his hands and said, "Hope that State Defender Duke and Lady of the State Defender Duke are well? Anyway, both of you are of first rank, isn't it too shabby to take only 2 attendants while going out? There are many people in the capital waiting to see you make a fool of yourselves." As he said this, he invited Qin Mian and Lei Tie inside. Chen Mufeng was Qin Mian and Lei Tie's friend, but also Emperor Xiaohuai's nephew. Qin Mian evaded serious matters and took up trifles. "It's not like you don't know that Tie and I are used to be casual and not used to travel in great style." Lei Tie said, "Thank you for your hospitality. I hope my wife and I don't cause you any trouble." Lei Tie was now in command of the army, which included 30,000 soldiers in the front army, 30,000 soldiers in the middle army and 30,000 soldiers in the rear army. He was the commander-in-chief with the largest number of generals. No matter who he was close to, he might arouse the emperor's suspicion, even if Chen Mufeng was the emperor's nephew. Chen Mufeng motioned for his servants to step aside and poured tea for them in person. "There won't be any. His Majesty knows that I've known you since I was in Zhaoyang County. No need to be guarded when talking about our old relationship." He looked at Lei Tie and said with a smile, "Back then, I felt that State Defender Duke was extraordinary, unlike any other man, but I didn't expect that you were the famous General Lei Tianren. Looking back, my father used to tell me stories about Lei Tianren's 3 victories against the Western barbarian, and I could recite them all the time." Chen Mufeng was 4 years younger than Lei Tie. Lei Tianren entered the army at the age of 16 and became famous at the age of 17. At that time, Chen Mufeng was only a medium-sized boy. Lei Tie lightly said, "The past is dead." Chen Mufeng only heard that the scar on Lei Tie's face had something to do with the imperial family. Naturally, he changed the topic and raised his teacup. In his words, he joked, "I had no choice but to hide my identity back then. State Defender Duke and Lady of the State Defender Duke, please don't take offense." Qin Mian shook his head and proposed a toast. Commandery Prince Mu overstated. "We haven't thanked you for sending people to clean up the State Defender Duke estate. If it were not for Chen Fu, we would be very busy when we first entered the capital. Many thanks. It's not worth mentioning." Chen Mufeng broke the spell first. "Come on, when there is no outsider, we should call each other by names, otherwise, it sounds really awkward. With you in the capital, there will be a lot of excitement in the future. You should take care of yourselves, especially Lei Tie. On the drill ground, swords have no eyes. You should be more careful when you conduct the drill." Qin Mian's eyes glinted sharply. "Thank you for your concern." Lei Tie made gestures of thanks to Chen Mufeng calmly. After that, they only talked about some interesting things about other people. At noon, Qin Mian and Lei Tie had lunch in the Commandery Prince Mu estate before they left. In addition to Emperor Xiaohuai, there must be other people who knew that Chen Mufeng and them had known each other for a long time. If they left without having lunch, some people might think they were being sneaky. It was better to be poised and do things openly. They chatted while riding the brown and black horses. "Tie, I remember that the Commandery Prince Mu is 4 years younger than you. This year, he should be 26. Why do I see that his house is quite empty? He's like us." "Ha!" After Qin Mian was taken aback, he said with a smile, "How did you know? Did you gossip with other people?" Lei Tie lightly coughed and helplessly glanced at him. "Overheard." "What happened?" Qin Mian asked curiously. He pulled the reins and the brown horse was almost close to the black horse. Lei Tie was not used to gossiping, but when his wife asked, he had to answer. He said in a low voice, I heard that the reason why he stayed in Zhaoyang County for so long was to avoid a person. As for who it is, I don't know. Qin Mian let go of the matter when his curiosity was satisfied. He didn't ask any more questions. It was hard for him to ask a gossip about his friends. End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 172. Lei Tie takes action. Back at the State Defender Duke Estate, the gatekeeper came quickly to lead the horses for the two men and raised his voice. The old lord and lady have returned. Why did he shout this? This was to inform other servants that those in charge of preparing hot water should prepare hot water, those in charge of preparing tea should prepare tea, and those in charge of taking care of horses should prepare to take care of the horses. Qin Mian teased Lei Tie, Tie, in the end, you couldn't escape from walking on the old road. Lei Tie was calm, You're pushing 40. Qin Mian stressed it badly and laughed heartily. Lei Tie was 30 years old this year, wasn't he pushing 40? Lei Tie was helpless. Being 8 years older than his wife meant he was doomed to be teased by his wife. Alas, he was going to teach his wife a lesson when it was time. Unaware of the impending crisis, Qin Mian continued to move forward briskly and then joked, as the old saying goes, 3 years gap is a generation gap. Between the two of us, isn't it almost 3 ah? Before he finished speaking, his waist was wrapped and his whole person suddenly flew up. He quickly grabbed Lei Tie's neck. What are you doing? Proving that I'm not old. Lei Tie took Qin Mian's hand and put it on his thigh. Steward Fu came in a hurry, only to see a figure flying away. Old Lord, this servant has something important to report. In the air, there were only Lei Tie's chilly 4 words, talk about it later. More than an hour later, Lei Tie appeared alone in the main hall of the front courtyard. There was still a light languidness after love-making on his body. The old man Steward Fu bowed his head, looking uneasy. What is it? Steward Fu reported, today, Old Master has received more than 10 invitation and visitation notices. One of them is an invitation notice from Princess Yanqing, inviting the lady to go. Give it to me. Give it to me. Another voice sounded. Lei Tie looked at the door. Qin Mian's face was covered with 2 parts of sneer and 8 parts of scorn as he came at a brisk pace. His momentum was overwhelming. Lei Tie walked over. There's no need to be angry with that kind of person. Qin Mian's cold aura dissipated. He sat down on the old-fashioned wooden armchair and lightly laughed. You should say, I'll support whatever you want to do. Seeing that he was no longer angry, Lei Tie nodded, I'll support whatever you want to do. Qin Mian patted him on the shoulder and told the steward, reply to tell Princess Yanqing that this lady will go to the appointment as scheduled, also, go find information about Princess Yanqing. The more detailed the better. Yes. Steward Fu said, Old Lord and Lady, there is one more thing. The old madam sent someone here today to urge Old Lord and Lady to go over. As for the purpose of asking Qin Mian and Lei Tie to go over, they all understood it without saying. Lei Tie was now a first-rank senior official. Could Lei Daqiang and Du Shi sit still at home? Lei Tie said coldly, I'll go in a moment. Yes. This old servant asks to withdraw. After Steward Fu left, Lei Tie sat down in the armchair beside Qin Mian and hugged him. Sleep a little longer? I'll be back to accompany you when I'm done. Qin Mian jumped up and sat astride Lei Tie's thighs. He then grasped the back of the armchair with both hands and put his legs through the gaps under the armrest of the armchair, locking himself in the chair. You are mine. If anyone dares to steal from me, they will be humiliated. I'm not going. Sleep. Lei Tie's heart almost melted into water. He kissed Qin Mian on the cheek, raised Qin Mian's head, and put it on his shoulder. He embraced the man and he caressed his back. Qin Mian had just deliberately locked him from leaving but dozed off in a daze and fell into a dark dreamland. Lei Tie quietly took the man back to the bedroom and placed him on the bed. Afterward, he took the 20 bodyguards and rode to Lei Xiangji's house. Lei Qinzhong raised his voice and called out, "State Defender Duke has come." The servants of Lei Xiangji's residence had been elated when they learned that their master's eldest brother was the State Defender Duke and the Grand General of the state. When they heard that the State Defender Duke had arrived, they immediately opened the gate and invited the visitors inside with all smiles. "This servants greet State Defender Duke. Please come in." However, Lei Tie and his party did not move. As per Lei Tie's instructions, Lei Qinzhong asked, "Where is your master?" The gatekeeper said, "The master hasn't come back yet. The old man, the 2 old ladies, and the madam are all here." Lei Tie then urged his horse into the door. Lei Qinzhong, Lei Qinshun, and the 20 bodyguards followed with an aggressive posture. Lei Daqiang and Du Shi were in the house when they heard that Lei Tie had come. Their faces lit up with happiness. "Old man, now that Wei Lang has become the first-rank senior official and even Qin Mian has become a noble lady of the first rank, we can't be angry with them anymore." Du Shi reminded Lei Daqiang, "When he comes, we'll make amends for what happened before. As long as we win him back, I'll be granted an imperial order to become a grand lady." Thinking that she could also put on a noble lady's clothes, Du Shi grinned from ear to ear. Wei Shi sipped the tea lightly, with contempt in her smile. To this day, Du Shi was still dreaming. If the hurt that one had suffered could be made up so easily, there would not be so many sad things in the world. The fact that Du Shi sent people to the State Defender Duke establishment today must have infuriated Lei Tie. Otherwise, he would not be willing to see Du Shi and Lei Daqiang again. Wei Shi covered her stomach and frowned in pain. "Lao Lei, my stomach hurts." Lei Daqiang quickly helped her and said, "Wei are you pregnant again?" The second year after they came to the capital, Wei Shi gave birth to a son, which Lei Daqiang dearly loved like the apple of his eye. "Can you help me back to my room, Lao Lei?" Wei Shi leaned weakly in his arms. Lei Daqiang held her carefully. "All right. Come, slowly. Lao Lei." Du Shi was very clear. Without Lei Daqiang, Lei Tie wouldn't give her respect. Wei Shi let out a painful groan. In a hurry, Lei Daqiang picked her up and walked out quickly. At the same time, he told the servants, "Quick, go invite a doctor." Only Du Shi was left in the main hall. A servant girl walked in a hurry, reporting to the old lady, "State Defender Duke is here." Du Shi could only face Lei Tie alone. She straightened her clothes and pretended to be calm. Lei Tie strode into the door and stood in the center of the main hall, condescendingly looked at the old woman sitting on the head's position. "I heard you're in a hurry to see me." Du Shi didn't get up. She raised her hand to the chair beside her and said, "Yes. Sit down." "Lei Tie, I called you." Lei Tie asked Lei Qinzhong, "Lei Qinzhong, what's the punishment for being disrespectful to the State Defender Duke?" Lei Qinzhong said in a loud voice, "Flog with a paddle for 10 times and sentenced to prison for 10 days. Du Shi was furious. "Lei Tie, you dare! Take her away." Lei Tie waved his hand without expression. His 2 bodyguards apprehended Du Shi and dragged her out the door. Du Shi's shrill cry sounded similar to a person being stabbed with a knife. "Let me go! Let me go! Ah! This old lady will fight you!" The servants were terrified. They went blank and at a loss of what to do. "Tell Lei Xiangji that if he can't manage his family well, then this official will manage it for him." Lei Tie coldly dropped a sentence and left, flinging his sleeve. Back at the State Defender Duke estate, Qin Mian was still sleeping. Lei Tie leaned over his lips and pecked him gently. He took off his shoes, went to bed to lie down, and took the man into his arms. It was unknown whether Qin Mian was aware of it or not in his dreamland, but he wiggled closer, groped for Lei Tie's waist, hugged him, and continued to sleep. When they woke up, they took a look at the chime clock in the corner. It was more than half the hour of C. After washing up, they had tea and cake in the reception pavilion. Lei Tie mentioned his visit to Lei Xiongji's house. After a while, the servant reported that Lei Xiongji had come. The two men met the guest in the main hall of the outer courtyard. Lei Xiongji put down his teacup and got up to bow with his hands folded in front. Greetings to Dagur and eldest sister-in-law. Wu Lang doesn't have to be courteous. Sit down. Qin Mian asked directly, is Wu Lang here for the old madam? Exactly. Lei Xiongji sighed, after all, she is my biological mother. He was in a dilemma, caught between his biological mother and his eldest brother and eldest sister-in-law to whom he was indebted. Wu Lang, you can rest assured that the old madam won't be wronged in prison. Tie just wants to scare her and give her one last warning. You've been in the officialdom for 3 years, so you could imagine how many waves Tie's presence will set off in the capital. We've always wanted to live in peace and it will be the same henceforth. But if anyone comes to trouble and make us upset, we'll fight back without hesitation. The same goes to the old man and the old lady, said Qin Mian lightly. Lei Xiongji nodded, I understand. Eldest sister-in-law and Dagur have tolerated the old man and the old lady many times in the past years, all in consideration of myself, Sangur and Sigur. Their feelings could not help the old man and the old lady for a lifetime. Once the last bit of feelings was used up, the brothers would become strangers. I don't have the face to ask Dagur to let go of the old lady. I just hope that Dagur can excuse her from physical pain in consideration of her old age. Lei Xiongji said with a bitter smile, the old man is fine, Wei Shi can manage him. On the old lady's side, I'm a bit hapless sometimes. However, today's matter seems to have spread. I'm afraid that Dagur's reputation. Dagur, did you intend to make this matter big? Lei Xiongji guessed. What is a reputation? Lei Tie did not deny it. I don't need a good reputation. For a moment, Lei Xiongji could not understand the meaning of this remark. Qin Mian and Lei Tie did not mean to explain. When Lei Xiongji returned home, Lei Daqiang immediately asked him, how is it, Lao Wu? Li Shi frowned, father-in-law, my husband is now an official. You have to change the way you address him. Used to call him that. What's so serious with an appellation? Lei Daqiang disagreed and then asked, how did it go? That Lei Tie, he actually dares to put your mother in prison. Lei Xiongji said coldly, why not? Father, don't you understand? Dagur's status is not only your son but also a first-rank state defender duke and an important minister of the emperor. Between your son and state defender duke, which of these two statuses do you think is the most important? Lei Daqiang was speechless. After a while, he said with regret, if only your official position could be higher, your mother could be granted an imperial order. Who could have imagined that Lei Tie turns to be a grand general? Wei Shi's heart jolted. She took a look at Lei Xiongji's face and as expected, it was unsightly. Li Shi inwardly sneered, then she sighed and said, if only there were no separation in the first place, father-in-law and mother-in-law can still live with Dagur. Won't it be a matter of course that mother-in-law can be directly granted imperial order? Father-in-law's identity will also be on a higher level. Father-in-law, don't you think so? Lei Daqiang wasn't aware that her words were ironic. He chimed in, ah yes. Lei Xiongji's face was livid and his hands were tightly held into fists in his wide sleeves. He yelled at Li Shi, Li Shi. Li Shi made a face at him and left with floating steps, husband, I'll go to see the child. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When the sun fell to the west, the carriage of the State Defender Duke Estate drove into Chang'an Street, entered through the middle gate, and stopped in the courtyard. Yuan and Manman jumped out of the carriage and saw their Lao Dai and Ah Dai standing side by side not far away. Smiles bloomed on their faces and they ran over quickly. Ah Dai, Lao Dai. Yuan and Manman, how did it go at the academy today? Were you being bullied? Mian asked and looked at his two sons. He didn't find any traces of abuse on them. He was relieved. Manman spoke first, nope. Don't worry, Adai. Yuan said with a poker face, Adai, we're big kids now. You can't call us Yuan and Manman anymore. Fine. Mian amusingly rubbed the heads of the two little boys. Your Lao Dai and myself will call you Ruki and Rulan henceforth, alright. N. Also, can't rub our heads anymore, said Ruki with all seriousness. Mian reluctantly released his hand, fine, fine. Alas, my sons are not so cute after they grow up. Adai, all the students in the academy were envious of the school bags that Adai designed for myself and Gurgur. Lei Rulan quickly coaxed his Adai to be happy. Ruki chimed in, they also envied mine and Didi's oversleeve. Mian chuckled, is that so? Yes. Adai, also. The family of four walked back to the inner courtyard while talking and laughing. End chapter.